West Virginia FFA. My name is Patrick Grady, and I bring you greetings from my hometown of Wahoo, Florida. I know in these very challenging times we are making adjustments to be the best that we can be and accomplish the goals and objectives we set for ourselves. And as you sit, many of you virtually watching this presentation and these leadership workshops, you feel different ways. For example, I've discovered audiences that I've speak to nationwide. Some feel like in certain situations they're prisoners. Some of you may feel the same way, that you're locked in front of a television screen and a monitor and you're watching these programs, and if you could, you may just get up and leave. Others of you may feel like vacationers, that you're kicked back in your favorite chair, sitting on your favorite couch, watching these presentations and these leadership programs in a very casual situation. But my favorite people watching and enjoying presentations and programs are what I would call the learners. The learners are the ones that you and I know that are typically what I'd call keepers of the list. We're the ones that sit down and we have a job or a task we want to accomplish. We write down what that job or task is, and then when we accomplish it, we cross it off of our list. My favorite learners are those that will actually take it a step further, though. They will sit down, and when they want to accomplish something, though it may not be on their list, when they do it, they write it down. Then they scratch it off. Those are my favorite kind of learners, and I hope that today with this program and this presentation, you learn something that may be valuable. My experience, as you saw in the intro, with the FFA organization has been lifelong as both a member at the local level, as a district officer, as a state officer, and also as an agriculture teacher and FFA advisor. But I hear stories all the time about amazing individuals who accomplish extraordinary things. Bob Whelan holds the world's record for the New York Marathon. Bob didn't finish in first place. As a matter of fact, Bob Whelan finished last. It took him 4 days, 2 hours, 17 minutes, and 48 seconds to cross the finish line. More than 72 hours after the very last runner. But Bob was somewhat different from you and I. When Bob was 18, he stood 6'2", weighed 220 pounds, and was the picture of perfect health. Bob had a lifelong dream, and that was to join the United States military. And he fulfilled that dream and traveled off to boot camp. When Bob Whelan was done with boot camp, he was actually sent along with his fellow soldiers and his troops to a place called Vietnam. While in Vietnam, they joined together to fight for the precious, precious freedoms that many of us take for granted. Bob, on a mission, was out with his fellow soldiers when accidentally he stepped on a landmine, and the brutal explosion from that bomb ripped his legs off. Bob lay in that field, thinking that his life was over, that he would not survive. But fortunately, a paramedic found Bob, and they were able to bring him back to a MASH unit, which is a mobile military hospital. They placed him outside on a cot, and as doctors went around triaging the patients, trying to determine who had an actual chance of surviving and would be taken care of first, and who may not survive, and they would have to leave him or her on their own. During the triage, they determined that Bob probably would not survive. As a result of that, they took him and they placed him in a body bag, and they zipped it to the top. Keep in mind, this was a time of war, of terrible trial and tribulations. As Bob lay in that bag, given up for death, a nurse walked by, a paramedic, and they noticed that that body bag had some movement. They went over and immediately unzipped it and determined that Bob Whelan had not died, that he was actually breathing. So they gathered him up immediately and they brought him into the emergency area. They operated on him and did the best that they could to save his life. And they did exactly that. And Bob began to recover. though he was in intensive care, began to recover and get stronger and stronger until they were able to move him to a major hospital where he continued his recovery. Eventually, Bob was brought back to the United States of America to a military base and a military hospital where he would be surrounded by family and friends to give him the support and encouragement he needed. And support and encouragement he needed both mentally and physically. And eventually, Bob Whelan overcame tremendous obstacles. He had triumph over tragedy, and he recovered. But here he was with no legs. Many people in that situation would think, my life is over. I have nothing left to live for. But Bob Whelan still had goals and dreams. Bob Whelan eventually went on to fulfill one of his goals, fulfill one of his dreams. And that was to compete in the New York Marathon. And as nearly 8,000 people screamed wildly, Bob Whelan crossed the finish line of the New York Marathon. He had run the entire race on his hands. Bob Whelan was exhausted and on the verge of collapse. When a reporter walked up to him, had a camera and a microphone and said, Bob, Mr. Whelan, you finished the race 3 days after the last runner. 3 days after the last runner. Bob, can you even begin to call this a success? Bob Whelan, exhausted and on the verge of collapse, looked that reporter right in the eye and said simply this: success is not only when you start, but when you finish. And I finished. All I was concerned about was getting through, being the best that I could be, not the best in the world, but the best that I could be. That's what we ask of you as agricultural educators, as FFA advisors, as parents. Be the best that you can be at whatever it is you choose to do with your life. Because ultimately, you and you alone are responsible for your successes. Yes, we can encourage you, we can guide you, we can direct you, but the choices and the decisions that you make on a daily basis will propel you towards success and its awesome, awesome value, or it can propel you towards failure and in some cases terrible consequences. At championship sporting events, you never hear the chant, "We're number 2." Coaches seldom gather around teams that finish last in their conferences and ask them, how'd you do it? Through FFA, this tremendous organization, we challenge you to overcome obstacles, to not hesitate, to get involved and get involved now. When I was approximately your age, I grew up in a very small town in north central Florida. And I had a pair of boots that needed to be repaired and resoled, and so I brought them to a place called Jackson's Shoe Repair, which was a very small family-owned business in the center of our town. I dropped them off and went about my business, and as we often do, got sidetracked and forgotten that I had dropped those boots off until one day my mother found in our house a repair ticket for that pair of boots. She said, "Patrick, did you pick up your boots?" I said, "Mom, I forgot about them. They've been there for quite a while." She said, "Well, listen, I'll be in town tomorrow. I'll stop by and see if Mr. Jackson has them." So, Mom, that would be awesome. I appreciate it. Well, a couple days later, Mom was at the house and we were talking, and I said, "Oh, by the way, did you ever check on those boots?" She said, "Actually, I did." She went on into Mr. Jackson. I said, "Mr. Jackson, my son dropped off the boots. There's no date on it. I'm thinking it was a while back, and I want to see if they're ready yet." Mr. Jackson said, "Mr. Grady, I kind of remember that." He said, "Let me look up the record." He looked it up and he said, "Those boots were dropped off about 6 weeks ago. Let me see if I've got them done." Said Mr. Jackson went in the back room and he was here moving things around and finally came out and said he had my boots. He said, "Miss Grady, they'll be ready next Thursday." And I laughed because I said, he's had the boots for about 6 weeks, but he never quite got around to them. Do we do that as FFA members? Do we say, "I'll be part of that team next year. I'll get involved in the SAE project, those competitive events next year, next week. I'll do that tomorrow, and there's a country song written and sang by Garth Brooks that says, tomorrow never comes. I have accomplished more in my life because I've assumed what I call a do-it-now attitude. Take care of what I can immediately. Don't put it off to tomorrow until the job is actually done. That's something I've learned through this tremendous organization. When I was young, we grew up in a very rural environment, and I was part of a very large family. And I remember in 6th grade, I had the first opportunity in my life to spend the night at my friend Jim's house. So I traveled to Jim's house by school bus after school on Friday, and Jim was an only child. I was one of 9 children, and so it was kind of a treat. So I get to Jim's house, and we played some football in the front yard. We just had a great time and a great visit, and that night we sat down to eat dinner, and when we were done eating a great meal, Jim's father said, "Hey, Jim, I got something for you. I don't want to forget." And he reached in his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and gave Jim a $10 bill. Well, I was shocked. Never in my life had my father just reached in his wallet and handed me money. So I didn't know what that was about. So later we're watching television, and I had to ask the question, "Jim, when we were at dinner, your dad gave you $10. What was that for?" Jim looked at me and said, "Oh, that was my allowance." And I said, "Your what?" He said, "That was my allowance." Well, never in my life had I heard of an allowance, nor had I gotten one. And I said, "Jim, what's an allowance?" And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, "Patrick, an allowance is like a paycheck. Keep in mind we're in 6th grade. $10 was a lot of money." He said, "Like a paycheck." He said, "I help out around the house. I take out the trash. I mow the grass. I do things around the house during the week, and at the end of the week, that is my reward, $10. Well, I thought, that's an awesome idea. But I felt like my poor father, I needed to educate him. He had never heard about this allowance thing. So when Jim's father dropped me off on Saturday, my dad was out working in some fence, and I ran up and he said, "How was your night?" And I said, "Dad, it was great. We had a wonderful time, awesome time." I said, "But Dad, I got to tell you about something." I said, "We were done eating last night. Mr. Kautsky, Jim's dad, gave him a $10 bill. That's allowance. He gets it for helping out around the house, mowing the grass, taking out the trash." I said, "Dad, that allowance thing is awesome and incredible. It's like a paycheck." I said, "Dad, do you think I could get an allowance?" My father honestly looked at me and said this, "Patrick, let me tell you something. Some parents have to pay their children to be good. But I'm so proud of you. You're good for nothing." I walked around for about 2 weeks going, "Dude, I am good for nothing." But I will tell you this, the talents, the skills, the abilities you are learning in this organization we call FFA, and in your classes with your agricultural educators and advisors, they are lifelong skills that will positively impact your life, but you must choose to take advantage of it. It's one thing to pay your dues and be in the FFA, but it's another for the FFA to be in you. And that means to be active, take an active role in leadership. But times are changing. Look at us here today. Instead of delivering a live presentation in front of an audience, we're doing it virtually. When I taught agriculture, I was a middle school and high school agriculture teacher outside of Gainesville, Florida, in a very small community. We had a school farm. We called it the land lab. We would learn in the classroom, then we would go down and put into place what we had learned. We would implement that. One day we had an emergency, as many programs do, and what had happened is when our hog pen, one of our pigs had broken a major water line. So I had to take the class like your ag teachers will do and go, "We're going down to the land lab to fix the water line." I bring them down to the land lab. Water is flowing out of this pipe, shooting straight up in the air. The pigs are loving it. They're laying down, having an awesome and incredible time on a hot summer day. I get down, well, the first thing I need to do is turn the water off. So I took to one of my students, I said, "Curtis, I need you to go behind the main barn and shut off the water valve." He said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Grady, I got it. I'm your man." We turned and went around behind the main barn, and the rest of the students and I are standing watching the water again shoot out of the ground. Suddenly I hear this, "Mr. Grady!" I said, "Yeah, Curtis." He said, "Which way do I turn it?" I said, Curtis, turn it clockwise. He yelled back, Mr. Grady. I said, yes, Curtis. He said, I got a digital watch. So I had to say, like many of you've heard, Curtis, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Some of you have been there. Times are changing, so what we must do in this industry we call agriculture is we must change with those times, look for more innovative and productive ways to accomplish a task. You have to adjust your talents, your skills, and abilities that you learn in FFA. Agricultural education helps you to develop yourself as an individual. Public speaking skills. Some people panic when they hear the words public speaking. Public speaking is simply a conversation. You do those in your agricultural education classes as you discuss ideas. You do them when you're talking with one another individually or in a small group. And the skills that agricultural education and FFA help you to develop will be invaluable to you throughout your years. One day, as a parent, maybe you'll be addressing the school board or the PTA. Maybe you'll be in your agriculture teacher's classroom, sharing with young members and students your career choices. So again, the skills that you're developing today in these classes will be invaluable, and many of them cannot be learned simply by reading a book. Decision-making skills, personal responsibility and accountability through your projects, through knowing that you have to feed that livestock that you're raising and preparing to show, that you must show up every day and you must work hard in order to be successful. Being your best. Problem solving. If you've heard of the store J.C. Penney, the founder of that store used to encourage with an open door policy his employees come into the office and share with him anything good that was happening in the store or the organization, or any challenges that they had. As the story goes, one day a young associate came into Mr. Penney and said, Mr. Penney, we have a problem. Mr. Penney looked at the associate and says, tell me about it. And the associate shared the challenge that the store was facing at that given time. And after listening, Mr. Penney, when addressing that issue, looked at that associate and said, that is a problem. That is a challenge. That's good. The associate said, Mr. Penney, but it's a problem. How can that problem be good? Mr. Penney's simple response was this. When we face any issues, when we face any challenges or concerns, if we can come in and we can find the solution to that challenge, whenever it pokes its head up again, we have a way to fix it. So problems, he would say, are good. Again, you're developing these real-life skills that will help you for the remainder of your life. You're learning to do. You're doing to learn. You're earning to live. And you're living to serve. Again, my experience in FFA goes back to middle school. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have been involved and had incredible, awesome agricultural educators and FFA advisors who even today are some of my dearest friends. They're the individuals I still call for advice. They give me input on life, so it's building relationships that will last your entire lifetime. Through FFA, I had the opportunity, like many of you, to attend district and regional and state conventions. I went to the national convention over 15 times as both a student, as a state officer, an agricultural educator, and FFA advisor. I learned so many skills that have helped me out throughout my life. I've heard tremendous presenters who shared ideas and solutions to life's challenges that I was able to grasp, understand, and use to make my life and the life of my family better. But one of my favorite experiences at the National FFA Convention was in 1978. As a 10th grade student, I had the opportunity and honor to represent the state of Florida on the National Courtesy Corps. My assignment, backstage at the National Convention in Kansas City, Missouri. As I'm backstage just assisting and helping with any jobs or tasks, they brought keynote speakers to the back of that stage as they prepared to enter and do their presentation to the thousands of FFA members sitting in the audience. That particular year, the keynote speaker was a radio commentator by the name of Paul Harvey. He was famous for his radio show supporting agriculture. He was and still is famous for his stories that I would encourage you to read called The Rest of the Story. Paul Harvey delivered at the National FFA Convention, November 1978 in Kansas City, Missouri, one of the most powerful presentations I have ever heard, supporting the American farmer and agriculture. If you have seen this before, it will bring back memories and reinforce the importance of agriculture and agricultural education here in the United States and throughout the world. If you've not heard this before, I share with you Paul Harvey and God Made the Farmer.
And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to sit up all night with a newborn colt and watch it die, then dry his eyes and say, maybe next year. I need somebody who can shape an axe handle from a persimmon sprout, shoe a horse with a hunk of car tire, who can make harness out of hay, wire, feed sacks, and shoe scraps, who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon, and then painin' from tractor back put in another 72 hours. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets, who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer. It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners, somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk, somebody who'd bail a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer.
Those involved in production agriculture, agribusiness, virtually any form of farming or producing food and fiber for the American people and people around the world tend to have incredible work ethic. That's one of the things that this program teaches, and it is through being part of a team, through individual FFA events, through being involved in agricultural education. Work ethic is basically this: showing up early, doing the job, doing more than is expected, and then sometimes staying late. And when maybe you are not busy and you don't have a specific job or task to do, you look around and figure out what needs to be done and take the initiative to accomplish that task. That's work ethic. That's a talent, a skill, and ability that will get you further in life than many things. No matter what your trade or profession is, whether you go on to a college or university and perhaps become an FFA advisor, an agriculture teacher, or you go into any other business or industry in your life. Or maybe you will make the decision that I don't want to go to college. That's fine. Maybe I want to go to trade school. Had a student when I taught school, one of my favorite students, and we still go hunting and fishing together today. Tim was a young man that had challenges in life. He wasn't born with a silver or golden spoon in his mouth. He had to work hard for what he achieved, hard for what he accomplished. And he also had an additional challenge. Tim, throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school, struggled with reading. As a result of that, he was put in a teacher's class, Miss McClellan. Miss McClellan was a special education teacher, and her job, along with her assistants, were to help Timothy and the other students improve on their academic skills. Tim struggled all through his high school career. He served as a chapter officer for me and was just an outstanding young man. And as Timothy grew, as Timothy developed into an amazing gentleman, he still encountered the struggle of simply reading. He graduated with a special education diploma, which was a diploma back then that they gave to young men or young women that showed they succeeded, but they may have fallen just a little bit short of the academic standards. Tim was not deterred. Tim chose after high school, even though at the age of 16, he was a certified welder. He chose after high school to pursue higher education. His careers of choice involved a number of different certifications in the trades. He went on to become a plumber. He received certification as an electrician. He also received a certification in HVAC, which is air conditioning and heating. When Tim was done with those programs, he got a job with a construction company, began working hard with that incredible work ethic that I recently spoke about. And over a number of years, he started at the bottom, but he started making his way, and he worked his way up to the top to become a project lead. He was in charge of projects including building elementary schools, churches, incredible structures. Well, about 2 years ago, I received a phone call from Tim, and we're talking, and he goes, "Mr. Grady, I got a problem. I've got an issue." And I said, "Tim, anything I can do to help you, please let me know." He goes, "Well, there is. It's a money problem." And I thought, he's calling to borrow money. That's a problem, because I don't have any. I said, "What's the issue?" He said, "Mr. Grady, we just finished a project of which he was the project manager." He said, "We came in ahead of schedule and under budget." He said, "The challenge is this. I'm very comfortable and happy working with the organization that I'm with. But a subcontractor approached me that worked on this job under my direction and has offered me a position with their company." I said, "Well, Tim, that's a great opportunity." He said, "It is, but how do I move forward?" I said, "Tim, let's think this through. We've always got to be thinking forward. The choices and decisions that we make today, how they will affect us and help us in the future." I said, "Tim, you brought it up, but can I ask you what you're currently earning with the company you're with?" He said, "Absolutely." He said, "I'm making $60,000 a year." I said, "Well, that's awesome." I said, "My suggestion would be go to this new subcontractor, this new organization, and explain to them you are happy where you are. And just see what they have to say." He called me the next day. He said, "I talked to the new company." He said, "They really want me to work for them. They've offered me $80,000 a year." I said, "Tim, that's awesome. He said, what now? I said, go back to your company, tell them you received an offer to go work for the new organization and just see what they say. Explain to them you're happy working with them, but this is an opportunity that can assist and help your family. A couple days later, Tim calls me back and he says, Mr. Grady, as I talked to them, my current company, they want me to stay. He said, they've offered me $100,000 a year to stay. What do I do? I said, Tim, don't walk. Run to the new company and ask them what they would suggest. Tell them what your original company organization offered you, but see what their input is. He called me a few days later. He said, Mr. Grady, I've taken the new job with the new subcontractor, new business, running a number of their operations and projects. They've offered me $112,000 a year, company automobile, profit sharing, increased vacation time. Why do I tell you that story? Tim is an incredible success. Why? Because of his work ethic. Because he shows up, he does the job, he does more than is expected of him. Though by our academic standards, he may have been a failure or fallen a little bit short, he is a success in life. And I will tell you this, I have learned during my time on this earth. You cannot have a $1 million dream with a minimum wage work ethic. You cannot have a $1 million dream with a minimum wage work ethic. Now, it can be a big dream. It doesn't have to be financial. But in order to achieve the best in life, we must be willing to work, contribute to our communities, contribute to our families. Where does it begin? Number one, it begins at home. Then it is encouraged and multiplied by being part of agricultural education and FFA. We're involved in FFA. We're involved in agricultural education. But what is the strength of the organization? What is the backbone? It's the members that have come before us, that have laid a foundation upon which we can build our lives. But the strength of any program I have discovered in my life lies within the power of the men and the women that work tirelessly day in and day out to help make you better. Those are your FFA advisors, your agriculture teachers, who spend time not only during the school day guiding and directing you, but they spend time on the weekends, after school, in the summertime, taking you to competitions, taking you to conventions, to leadership programs. They are the strength of the program, and I would challenge you to tell them thank you. Thank you for the contributions they're making to your lives. Thank them for the time they are choosing to invest in you on a daily basis. And I will tell you, as a former agricultural educator and FFA advisor, it's not always easy. But they are amazing individuals that push us to be the best that we can be. Again, not necessarily the best in the world, but the best that we can be. They expect us to be the best, and they expect the best from us. They encourage and challenge us on a daily basis. Tell them, thank you. Write them a note. Send them a text. Let them know that their hard work, their dedication, is both noticed and appreciated. They're the individuals that boost us up when perhaps we fall short of a goal or a dream. They encourage us each and every day. Many of you and all of you are familiar with the store Walmart. Sam Walton, when he started his stores, had a philosophy. And that philosophy was he would sneak up and down the aisles of his stores, and he would try to catch somebody. He would try to catch somebody doing something right. And when he caught them doing something right, no matter how small that job, no matter how small that task, he would recognize him or her in front of fellow associates. Because he discovered that that attitude of catching someone doing something right, encouraging him or her, became contagious. It changed the attitude of the workplace. It built others up. I will challenge you as a leader in life, no matter what you choose to do, is to always praise in public, criticize in private. If you want people to work and work hard, if you want to lead people, again I say praise in public and criticize in private. My home state of Florida, like the rest of the country, faces numerous challenges each and every year. One of our biggest challenges happens in the late summer, and there's these storms we call hurricanes. A number of years ago, we had 5 hurricanes in one summer crisscross the state of Florida, and it was as if they made an X over the roof of my house. Well, I had a presentation in South Florida in a town called Fort Myers, and I was able to fly in, and it was following 2 of the hurricanes that devastated our state. Now, as I was flying in on the airline, I was able to look out the window and I could see the devastation that the storm had made, not only to cities and towns, but to the agricultural lands and forests, the crops that were in that area. The airplane landed and I went to the rental counter and I rented a car to drive to my presentation, and I had a couple hours to spare. So I thought, I see a lot of devastation around our area and perhaps on television, but I want to see how it affected the community of Fort Myers and the surrounding area. When I left the airport, I was driving the rental car, and as I started to enter Interstate 75, I noticed a big sign for Cracker Barrel that had been pushed to the ground. Not just bent over, not just leaning, but pushed over by the strong winds and essentially snapped off at the bottom. As I drove to the next exit and pulled off, I came to the end of a road and there was a store that had been devastated and a gas station that was just in rubble. I turned right and went down and I saw a neighborhood, and I started driving through the neighborhood just to see again what people were overcoming in the challenges of life and how maybe they were handling it. And as I drove down through this neighborhood, I noticed that there were houses that may be just missing a few shingles. If the winds came in and the winds tore shingles off the house, or maybe a little bit of siding, maybe tipped a tree or a plant over. And you would have houses that had very little or no damage, and then you would see a home that was totally destroyed, whether through high winds or maybe a tornado. Houses that were totally gone, but laying on the ground beneath where those houses used to stand, where those roofs used to protect families, that home that people gathered in on a daily basis, was absolutely gone. The tornado or the winds had wiped them out. The only thing that remained was a concrete slab that we call a foundation. And on those foundations of many of those houses, though the storm hadn't been through the area more than a week ago, there were crews gathered together with people from that community, and on that foundation they were rebuilding. What does agricultural education do? What does FFA do for each and every one of you? It lays a solid foundation upon which you can build your life, and no matter what storms life throws at you, if you choose to do so, you can overcome those obstacles, live your lives to the fullest, and be the best that you can be. West Virginia, FFA. I am Patrick Grady. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all the best.